Hey everybody, today I want to take a few minutes and talk about my experiences with keeping Discus. I've had them for about 1.5 years now, so I feel like I can confidently make a few statements about them. And I mostly want to encourage anybody who's been thinking about keeping Discus or you're considering them, but maybe you're a little intimidated by some of the things you've heard about them, such as how frequently you have to do water changes or the high temperatures you have to maintain them at. Perhaps you've heard they require special food or special substrate, housing, tank mates, filtration, etc. There's a lot of stuff out there about Discus that makes them seem like they're very difficult fish to keep, and you have to be some kind of next level super expert fish keeper in order to keep them healthy. And I'm here to tell you none of that is true. They're actually a fairly hardy fish. They've been bred in the hobby for so many years now, and in fact I can say so many decades now that they've been bred into the hobby, that in my experience, as far as I can tell, they're not a whole lot more difficult to keep than angelfish or these rainbow fish you can see. So I will say the long and short is, if you have enough skill to keep angelfish or you can keep rainbow fish alive and healthy, then I believe you've got enough skill to keep Discus alive as well. So as far as the temperature of the tank, I do not keep this tank at any higher temperature than I keep any of my other tanks. This sits usually right around 79.5, 80 degrees maybe, somewhere in there usually. As far as food goes, I famously do not feed my fish beef heart or any other kind of live food at this point. Once upon a time I did use some frozen bloodworms, but I've moved away from them. More on that in another video. But these fish do not get anything other than prepared dried food. I do give them a little bit of a variety, but it's all just basically fish food. I give them the Tetra Pro color enhancing crisps. I give them high-calorie algae wafers. I give them sinking granules. Probably on occasion I give them the oddball other things, Sarah O'Nip, little treats once in a while, things of that nature. But basically they get nothing more complicated than prepared fish food. I don't keep them at a high temperature. I don't do frequent water changes on this tank. I did do one recently, got the glass all nice and wiped down. The tank's looking pretty, so I thought I'd sit here in front of it for a few minutes. But once a month, maybe once every few weeks. A lot of times I do water changes on this tank simply for something to do during one of my live streams. I do a live stream every Friday night and Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're interested in hanging out with me here in the fish room, you're welcome to do that. Again, Friday night and Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. But other than doing that, there's just not a lot of tank maintenance. I'm not in here every day or every other day. I'm not doing these massive 80 or 90% water. Well, I kind of do sometimes do those really large water changes, but that's just because that's what I do, and it's once a month maybe. It's not once a day. Again, no high temperatures, no special conditions. You can see I keep them with plenty of other tank mates. They're in a planted tank. I've got substrate. All of the things that you hear that you can't do with Discus, such as keep them in a planted tank or keep them in a tank with substrate or keep them with tank mates. Clearly you can do all of that and your Discus will still look fine. Now, I will say I've had a few people out there early on in my Discus keeping career that people would say that my fish were stunted and that the eyeballs didn't match up if you count the eyeballs and the number of eyes in the body and all that. I've said this before, if you're measuring the beauty and health of your fish by using a ruler and putting it up to their eyeball, then in my opinion you're doing it wrong. But you do it however you want to do it, and if that's the way you're doing it and you're competing or you're taking them to shows where that's part of the judging mechanism, that's fine. You can do all that and so on and so forth. If you would just like to keep some Discus that are perfectly healthy and vibrant and beautiful, and if you never ever worry about getting a little ruler out there and measuring the eyeballs and all that kind of stuff, then I think you will be very much rewarded by keeping this. They're absolutely beautiful fish, obviously, but they're also really, really interesting fish. If you put them in a community tank, if you put them in a tank that much more mimics their natural environment with plants and substrate, you'll find that they're actually very interesting fish to watch. They're not boring fish that just float motionless in the water looking beautiful like you see in some discus tanks. Frankly, when I look at some discus tanks, what I see is a bunch of terrified fish huddling in the corner, whereas in this tank you see fish interacting, doing all their thing. Now, I'll grant you it's a little bit hectic in here at the moment. It is feeding time, and so we're getting to see a little bit of activity going on behind us. But normally this tank is just a bunch of fish doing their thing, poking around, looking for food, swimming in and out of the plants. Really, really rewarding fish to keep. In my opinion, the only real limiting factor of the discus is the cost. They're kind of expensive. I was fortunate enough that one of my viewers gifted me many of the discus I have. I did purchase a few of them myself, but most of them came from a very generous viewer of mine. I get it. Not everybody is in that situation. They do get to be a little bit larger. They do, I don't think they need to be kept in schools in my experience. I do have one in a tank on the other side of the room where I've separated them out. The only issue I've had with the discus was an issue of bullying. I didn't pick up on it in time, and I did lose one discus due to bullying. It was stressed to death, basically. And when that fish was killed, the rest of the fish moved on to another fish that they singled out and were targeting. And at that point, I realized what was going on. I separated that fish. I put it in a 55-gallon tank by itself over there. Well, there's other fish in the tank. It's the only discus in the tank over there, and it's doing great. It looks beautiful. It's behaving normally. So I don't think they need to be kept in a large group, but a lot of people like to keep them in a group, and if you're going to do that, you need a larger tank. And again, these are only a year and a half old. They're a long way from being full grown. They do get fairly large, and so that could be a limiting factor as well. I would say if you're going to do a single discus or maybe two discus or three, maybe a 55 might be about the smallest you'd want to consider. This is a 125, and that should be adequate for these to grow out for their whole life. But as far as the challenge in keeping them, it does not seem to be difficult at all. My water's fairly soft, but my pH is around 7.3. My carbonate hardness is about 2 to 4. It fluctuates a little bit coming out of my tap. I do have well water, so I don't have to worry about the issue of chlorine or chloramines or anything like that. But again, I do nothing special to this tank. That I don't treat this tank in any way that I don't treat any of my other tanks. These, to me, are simply ordinary fish. They get treated like all my other tanks, monthly water changes, bi-monthly water changes. I only work on the filter every few months. It's a big canister filter that I get to when I get to it. No special treatment whatsoever, and these discus are all vibrant and beautiful and healthy. So don't be intimidated by all the stuff you hear about them. It's simply not true anymore. It may have been true 20 or 30 years ago that discus were very, very difficult and fiddly fish that you had to keep under very certain circumstances and all that. Nowadays, if you can keep angelfish, you can keep discus. So leave your thoughts below. If you're a discus keeper and you want to hate on me or whatever, I'd be interested to hear your comments. Otherwise, if you're somebody that's been thinking about discus and you do have any further questions or so on and so forth, by all means, please ask me. And if you'd like to chat with me more or less live in real time, don't forget I do a live stream every Friday night and Sunday night, and that is the purpose of those live streams. I like to make myself available so I can interact with everybody. I can answer questions. I can help people troubleshoot, answer questions about me, my channel, YouTube, whatever's on your mind. Friday night and Sunday night at 8 p.m. is your chance to share those. So thanks for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed that. Make sure you're subscribed, do all that YouTube stuff, whether that matters or not, I don't know, but do it anyway. That's just a habit of many years of saying. So thanks again, and I'll see you real soon on the next one.